everybody.
Hi, Paul. Hi, Alan.
Hi, Jason. Mr. Dillon. Isn't it nice it's 30 degrees less than it has been in the last 2 days?
So I had a concert Mystic on Tuesday night. It was hot. I thought I was going to pass out.
Yeah, that's not good. Yeah, it's 68 here and raining. It's perfect.
Yeah.
It is.
Agreed.
It is 69 here and overcast. The rain was this morning.
So I wanted to get us together. When Jonathan and my team met for our regular
Actually, I think we were good. Is Keith on? Okay, great.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt. Great.
Yep, I'm here. So this is what started the discussion. So in April, we had $116,000 in outside labor.
And then in May it was 60.
Correct.
And I'm like, what the hell's going on?
Correct. So we dove into the 160, but obviously I want to know the 60 as well. But Jonathan, correct me or Scott, I think we had 15 from Xers, 2 from BrightNet, and 1 from HCL that made up this one, that were, I guess, were the ones that dropped, that made up this 160.
Yeah, and a
Is that correct?
similar thing with the 62. It's the same kind of.
Okay.
Yep.
So I and Jonathan put a spreadsheet together. Denise put a spreadsheet together from her end. But I guess what I'm looking for is that those extra invoices that dropped in April and May are not dupes. That Scott, in fact, approved them, and we're okay. So,
Well, can we
Oh,
back
sorry.
up? What
Yep.
are they for?
They're mostly for tools. Is that true, Scott?
Outside services, primarily Jira and Clarity.
Yeah. So the tool stuff.
If you
It's
that-
going to the CIO.
Well, yeah, eventually. But right now,
Yeah,
they're.
it's ours. It's our fault.
And
So I
none
just
of-
want to dig in
none
and
of-
understand
none-
what they are.
And none of this stuff was forecast, by the way.
No, there was 50 that was for, I think it was Jeff Skipper. And the rest were not forecast, but we expect and still expect to be covered by the license that costs that will end up hitting service quality, not service quality, quality assurance.
These are outside services that were transferred to me from Ken Perry's organization.
That's what I
There's
thought.
nobody new on that list that I added on. These are the same Xers, same BrightNets that split from Ken Perry over to me.
Yeah, and what my thought was that all of that expense was going to be covered someplace else. There was a bucket for this stuff.
So we have POs created for the majority of these, so we can, look at those POs and see where the cost is settling and probably see exactly what invoices are hitting those POs as well. We can push that over to AP, because if I'm looking at the list today, right?
Yeah.
So HCL invoices us, they have a handful of folks, and they invoice us all on one invoice, right? And that invoice is passed over to Scott. Scott reviews and approves. He approves to the cost center. The rest of the folks here, so we have HCL we discussed, that's the process. Jeff Skipper is the same exact situation where we get invoiced by Harvard Partners. Harvard, that invoice goes over to Scott. Scott reviews and approves, and he approves to the cost center.
Yep.
Then we have the Xers and the BrightNet folks. In terms of BrightNet, we have two BrightNet folks that typically is on one invoice. And then for the Xer guys, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 Xers guys that are typically invoiced to us on an individual basis. So we would get, in this case, 4 invoices each month for approval. For BrightNet and Xers, from my understanding, those particular invoices do not get charged directly to the cost center. They get charged to the PO. PO that Richard Allen, for example, has created.
But that PO still hits Scott's cost.
It's gotta hit in someplace.
Of course. No, I get it. But
That'll someplace.
the reason why I mentioned the PO is because we can track and figure out exactly what cost is hitting the PO, what invoice is hitting the PO, and where the cost is settling, right? That should be all tracked within the PO world.
Oh, there, sorry. I got on hold for a minute. So even, Keith, you said that BrightNet sometimes puts multiple people on their invoice. Xers sometimes put multiple people on their invoice.
No.
I still don't understand,
No,
unless
it's the
they're
opposite.
unless
the
they're
opposite.
holding some back.
No,
and we're
it's
getting
the
a big
opposite.
dump in April. Sorry.
It's the opposite of what you said, Alan. They don't put multiple people on their invoices. So
Correct.
that's why you'll see multiple Xers invoices for the exact same dollar amount. Each one of those represents one
Yep.
consultant.
Yep.
Each one of and they're all paid the exact same amount. So you'll see a lot of 9,000, 9,000, 9,000, 9,000. That's what that is.
And sorry, that's what I meant to say, but I was all asked backwards. So that's what's driving up the count of invoices, right? But I still don't understand the increase in amount that hit us in April.
Right, because we were like this, and then all of a sudden, bam,
Oh, yeah,
there was a big spike.
So 12,000 of that is coming from that other invoice that I mentioned in an email this morning, comes from Omninex. Omninex was the completion of the work that they were doing with Jira from Voyager. That's that $12,000 invoice. They charged more, they broke up their bill in like three different, I can bring up the email. They broke it up in three different payments, and this was their final payment. They sent a note to us saying, "Are you okay? We've done everything we needed to do for this." And we said, yes. That's that $12,000 that hit. So there should be a $12,000 spike that came from Omninex for Voyager for the separation, for the Jira migration in Italy.
and that's hitting yours. You approved that,
That's
correct?
one that's on the list there. Yep, you'll see
Okay.
Omninex for 12,000 plus. Yep.
Okay, but that takes us to 102.
Yep, and then also too with historically T&M, you'll have more spent in March and April because there's more working days in those months than they are in other months throughout the year, especially in March. So
But Keith, that can't be like tens of thousands of
No.
dollars.
It might be 1 or 2
I'm
days.
just throwing out buckets of cash of why that would be the case, because historically, if I look at it year by year, March is typically always the highest spend for T&M within my program.
Okay, but that's good to know, I guess. But that I find it hard to believe that that's $100,000 in April.
Yeah. Well, the only way that we could find this out is, again, track what's been charged directly to the POs and then add up those amounts. You can see those invoices. We can ask, AP to provide us with the invoices that hit the PO for those particular months and what the costs were. And then we'll figure out at that point, okay, well, do we get overcharged or, was there some other invoices that hit there? I think we'll know the end result at that point.
I also was
Possible
wondering
that-
I was
No, go ahead, John.
while we were kind of digging into it initially, we were wondering, so when we were looking at and trying to figure out what the multiple invoices from, say, HCL or the BrightNet, it looked like they had 2020, at least the comments said like this person from September to December on 2024. And I expected that to be accrued for. Would that have hit 25? Or do you think
Well,
that's an older comment? And it
I
just
don't know, but if they're invoicing us for work in 2024 and it's hitting Scott's cost center when it may have or should have been lottery, I don't know, then we're running out of runway.
material.
I know, but I just want to make sure that that drop in April and May, it is really all of us, that we have really approved those invoices, and it might be backdated invoices that just came through in April and May, but I think it'd be good for us to know that, and that they're not double dipping. But
Yeah. Another thing too, and this is for you, Scott, maybe we can reach out to AP and figure this out. On the Harvard invoices, do you think, because there's 3 folks on that Harvard invoice, there are 2 for Otto and there's 1 for Scott. So I'm wondering if, because Otto approves and Scott approves, and I'm wondering if AP takes Scott's cost center and charges the whole invoice.
So Keith, this is what we're seeing, right? 13, 15, 13, 116, and then 60. Like,
Yep.
what the hell's going on, right? If I run 2024, right? I run 2024. Same cost center, nothing, hardly anything. It's all of a sudden in April, and then also in May, we have these large large charges to Scott's cost center.
it might be what Keith is saying. We may be picking up Otto's consultants, and maybe he started doing something crazy in April and May.
Otto from Willis's group?
Correct, because like I said, when we get invoices from Harvard, we get invoices. The invoice itself, it's all time and material, so we have 3 consultants on that invoice. We would have 1 for Skipper, and then we would have the other 2 from Otto. So maybe, and I would have to reach out to AP and ask, but maybe AP is charging all of that cost to Scott's cost center and not splitting it up to Otto's.
Well, it depends on where this information came from that we're looking at on this spreadsheet that Jonathan and Denise have.
Well,
Those amounts for Jeff Skipper are the amounts in the invoice that you send me, because you send me an invoice every month, Keith, from Harvard.
Yep.
You break down how much Jeff's bill is, and you break down how much Otto's 2 folks are. The
Right.
amounts that are on this are exactly the amounts for Jeff Skipper, the 15,592, the 12,507. And the Otto ones are somewhere between like $5,000 and $7,000 each month. But
Yep.
Jeff's amounts are the amounts that are in that invoice that you send me every month just for Jeff.
Got it. So AP is splitting it from what we're getting from Jonathan then.
And Scott, when you get those invoices from Harvard, the only part that you're approving is Jeff's piece of the pie. Is that
That's correct. And Otto provides his code numbers. I provide my code numbers, and they're not the same.
Now
I don't know if it still accounts for our $100,000.
well, the extras, to me, I was wondering if the extras were really, because in just April and May, there were, how many consultants? So 4 so that accounts to about, in April and May for the 4 extras invoices, $80K. So it's 50, 60 in April, and 4 invoices in May for 40.
So Jonathan, in that SAP detail, does it have the invoice number?
Yes. Yep. Well, they don't have to keep the invoice number. I checked with Cynthia, but that reference number, the notes include the terms, but it's not something that we keep the invoice from that we're paying now.
John, you should be able to drill down into the transactional detail.
I know that's what I did with her, but she's like, but she said pretty clearly that when I spit out the info, I couldn't add it. It wasn't a field. We had the reference document number, the purchase invoice, the vendor number, and the notes from the PO. A text, which sometimes has it, but not always, is what she warned against. Which is why when I put that together.
So I'm looking at the hours for the month, right? So in April, they all had 168 hours. So that would come out at $55 per hour. That comes out to 37,000, right? So that is the month of April where we should be charged by Xers, according to the four guys. In May, they had 176 hours. So again, 176 times 55 times 4, that comes out to close to 39. So that would be what our monthly charge would have been for the month of May. So we had, 36 and say 39.
But I don't understand why it's so much more than January, February, and March.
And there were no invoices for those. Just
There were no invoices.
no, the
purchased
January,
in
February, and March, just the Harbor Partners hit.
Oh, so they dumped on us in April and May. They were holding them back.
That's what it feels like. But unless they didn't work in the first quarter, then my concern is, are there June, July, and August charges coming from January, February,
Yeah.
March work?
Would this be skewed if they were adding time into Rhode Island Clarity and being charged to IGT Global Solutions? Because during the months of January and February, that's what the process was, because we didn't move them over to Spinco into after that date. So in the month of January and February, they were adding time into Rhode Island Clarity, and we were charging to IGT Global Solutions.
But even so, of course that happened. But if they were entering their hours in Rhode Island and they were transferring them to gaming, I still don't understand why the bump. Because if they, right?
Yeah, I don't know. The
So
PO wasn't created into, I believe, March. That's when the PO was created for these individuals.
Right, that's what I'm seeing. I didn't receive my first set of invoices until April for them. So I have an email from you, Keith, dated March 21st about the consultants
Yep.
for Xers.
So is it fair to assume then that in June we're going to see another $50,000 to $100,000?
For Xers, yeah. Yep, they're still continuing to do their work. They're still
All
involved. Yeah.
stuff that's from Ken Perry, and this is a Jira migration. Is that the way I understand it?
They were working on the migration, now they're administrators. So now they're doing all the fixes for Clarity. It's an ongoing responsibility. First they were migration, now they're just administrators. Picking up basically what they did for Ken Perry.
And how long is this going to go on for? The whole year?
They've always had them. I think that they look for them to see if there's additional, whatever the administration work and Clarity is going to be that next coming year, depends on how much is needed for the administrators, if they need to continue on. So that's something that they look at each month. Each year, what their workload's going to be for Clarity administration.
Yeah, we have some guys on there since 2021.
Yeah.
So they've been around for a while. But in terms of the cost for Xers for June, I just did the total cost for March and April and May, and we kind of ran it to be either 36 or 39. So I would assume June would probably fall in the same category in terms of what the spend would be for Xers, which would be around 36 to 38 grand per month.
So we're looking at a shortfall in our forecast of about $350,000 if I use 50 grand, because there's going to be more than just that group, right?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think, if I understand you correctly, Paul, saying more than just us,
More
like
than
everybody that has
more-
Xers?
more than Xers, right? If we, oh, wait a minute.
Yes, right.
So if we saw 60 grand in May, 15 is our run rate, right? That's what we were seeing before. And so that means it's like at that 45,000.
Our run rate, January, February, are those amounts because it doesn't include Xers. They just dropped it on us in April. Is that correct, Keith?
I believe so. Yeah, that's when we made that transition from RemainCo to SpinCo, because these guys were underneath Tony at the time.
But if they were doing transfers from Rhode Island Clarity to us, and those were running correctly, then I still don't understand the bump. Because they'd be entering their time in Rhode Island, we're making a whatever company transfer into IGT. I don't know when that happens. Maybe it didn't happen in January, February, March, and all of a sudden we got a big crash from MergeCo in April and May.
Yeah, and we did have some issues with invoicing with Xers in the beginning of the year, and the reason why is because they were invoicing us within a different company, right? So because we were making these changes, we had a group of Xers, right? Who's going to be SpinCo, who's going to be RemainCo, and we were getting invoices at that time, which was identified to the wrong entity. So we had to work closely with them. And Scott, you probably remember this, beginning of the year when we were getting all these invoices and they were incorrect because they were going to the wrong entity and vice versa. So we did have some significant problems with Xers invoices at the beginning of the year. So maybe some of those voices that were in January and February didn't land into what we just discussed, which was the end of Q3.
Well, how do we get to the bottom of it? Because I know Paul said it's immaterial, but it's not immaterial if it goes out to the end of the year. It's significant.
Well, I know, and I'm chatting with Mary Campopiano right now. There wasn't a pot of money to cover Ken's stuff.
We never got it.
No.
And we only found out who we were getting, Scott, keep me honest, till what? October? I can't remember, but
It might have been a little bit sooner than that, but yeah, probably around that time frame. Yep.
is there any way we can get Xers? Well, do they invoice once a month?
Correct. Yes, they do.
So, okay, but it was maybe on our end that we got screwed up because of their invoice, and it was.
Yeah, it was a mess. I'll tell you right now, it was a mess because the movement that we had between the two groups.
Who else is using Xers? Am I the only one, or if this would be, if I'm not the only one, then we have this same problem in other places, I would imagine.
For SpinCo, you are the only one.
Okay.
Is there any chance that the Xers bills, we got it hit us first in April, but is there a January expense?
It feels like only my assumption that the April bill was a catch up for the.
Correct.
Okay.
That's why it was so big. Now, Jonathan, in the forecast, want you to put in that line at least $50,000 a month for the remaining portion.
For today.
Well, because they're 38.
No, I'm sorry, I meant for this rev, not 7. Like today, do it in today. So $50K.
Because past, you have even the 15 covered, didn't you?
No, I had that through July. That was the original thing. So I'll have, yeah, 50K a month. I'll add that right now after this call.
So keep me honest, Paul. Do we dig into this? Or do we think we know what's happening?
Well, it sounds like to me, it sounds like we pieced the pieces together that, I'm only like connecting the dots from the conversation. There's no evidence on the table. That 116 was a catch up for extras.
Xers. Yep.
Extras, and then and their run rate's about 40 grand a month, right, Keith?
Correct. Yep.
And that's why A was 60 grand, because there was some other background noise going on.
Plus Jeff from Harvard, plus a little HCL, plus BrightNet.
Yeah.
I'm looking through my Xers invoices of what I've been sent to approve, and I don't, something like that would have stuck out a huge amount like that. So nothing was sent to me to approve 3 months worth of Xers, unless I'm missing it, unless I filed it under the wrong folder. All of my Xers invoices, which started in April, were about $9,000.
Then, Alan, to answer your question, we haven't solved the question.
We haven't.
We haven't answered the question.
No, we haven't, because then if Scott hasn't approved them, they would never be in the hole from MergeCo to SpinCo, right?
Well, the thing is that if they invoiced us to IGT Nevada, right, and they added time to clarity, then we had to void that invoice that was for IG Nevada, and then they'll have to resend an invoice to IGT Global Solutions, because that process is different, because within Rhode Island Clarity, we approve to the cost center because they're adding time and they have a chargeable rate in Clarity. That was the biggest issue that we had at the beginning of the year is, okay, what system did they put time in? Because in Nevada PPM, there's no charge rate. In Rhode Island PPM, there's a charge rate to them, so we need to be careful, because if we did charge directly to a project or to a cost center, and they added time in Clarity with a charge rate, then that cost center itself would get hit double. So we had to be very careful in regards to that. That's why we will push it back with Xers to make sure that the invoices that was sent to us was correct. If they charged time into Clarity in Rhode Island, then they had to be approved through the Rhode Island process. But if they did not add time, then we can go ahead and go through that process with the PO on the Nevada side. I think honestly we should ask AP what Xer invoices settled in April, May. Let me reach out to Cynthia and ask Cynthia what Xer's invoices settled in April, May, and then that should solve our puzzle.
Okay. I just want to make sure that the 116 and 60, especially the 116, isn't going to happen again now that we don't have anything to do with RemainCo, that we get invoices from Xers, Scott approves them, and our run rate's going to go up because they weren't in January, February, and March, right?
Right.
Denise, we're running out of time, but Denise, you had a comment that on the Xers invoices, we have 4 individuals in Scott's group, but there's 5 individuals on the invoice. Did I read that right?
No, I was just looking at the list, wondering why there were 5 charges in each batch instead of just the 4, but I'm sure.
Okay.
Yep.
So Keith, if you can reach out. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we did have a 5th, but that person got termed in March. So yeah, we did have 5 at the beginning of the year, but as for right now, we have 4 individuals.
But he would still be charged on the April invoice or
Correct.
the cluster for January, February, and March. He would be
Correct.
part of the cluster.
Correct. Even like we discussed, they invoice us on a monthly basis. So that means if he got termed at the end of March, his invoice wouldn't settle until April.
Correct. So he's still on that big number.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, this is fun.
Interesting, because the PO was only for 4. We only did the PO for 4 people.
I think the PO was in March.
Correct. Yep.
Well, yeah, because it's dated 4/1, so yeah, we definitely, but,
So it should only be for 4.
oh, okay, got it, sorry.
No, never mind.
I'm getting confused, I'm looking through old POs and past POs and.
So Keith, you can talk to, what's her name, Cynthia?
Yeah, I'll reach out to Cynthia from AP to see if she can give us a list of invoices that settled in April, March for Xers, and then that should give us somewhat of a clue on why there was such a big spend in those particular months.
Well, it might be on our side too. I don't think probably the pull from lottery to IGT, maybe it was on our side and they only figured it out in April. Right, the company
Yep.
charge stuff.
Yeah,
Okay.
we had these issues for a lot of different vendors where, we had to move them and then they added time to clarity and so on and so forth. So Xers is one of a handful that we had these issues with.
Okay.
One quick clarifier for you guys while you're here is so the 50 that I'm adding, we're expecting this expense through 2026, right? That's what I just heard.
Yes,
Okay.
the 50 for the run rate for the rest of the year.
50 a month.
And next year too, John.
That's why I was asking for
Okay.
clarification.
And and then you'll have to annualize her 27, 28, 29.
But they shouldn't be in this cost center, right? Because they're following into the CIO organization.
Yeah, but there hasn't been an official announcement on that yet, right?
Right.
Right now, the invoices are going to settle here,
Okay.
unless you want them to hit in there, maybe we can work it out, but.
I don't know if that's gonna fly because they weren't working for CIO, so why would they pay those invoices?
So
Okay.
we'll put them in here now. I mean, eventually they will go to CIO, right?
Correct.
That was
Yeah,
what-
at some point down the road, they're gonna flip.
Right.
Okay, so Keith, if you talk to Cynthia, maybe we can figure out what the hell happened. I do feel that it's probably a Rhode Island clarity to Nevada clarity. Maybe some of it's on us because it was such an issue, and maybe all of them didn't get transferred until April.
Yeah, possibly. I'll let you know once Cynthia replies. I'm sending her an email now, and Scott, I'm gonna CC you on the email.
Okay.
Can you CC myself and Denise, just so Denise is in the loop?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Another fun one.
All right.
All right,
Thanks,
thanks
everyone.
everybody.
Bye
All
now.
right, guys. Thank you.